This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
You're listening to the Super Rugby Cymru podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the SRC podcast. Joining me, Big M, as always, Double R, Mr. Rob Rees. Good evening, my friend. How are you?
All good, sir. All good. We're still licking wounds here, as we'll discuss. But yes, we're still going strong.
Yeah, for everyone who's listening or watching in, you were a bit tepid before we hit the record button, and I can see it's very much followed through. So why don't we start right there? Let's get some salt out. Let's pour it in the wounds, and let's not forget. I did say Llandovery were going to win by 30 points. Whether or not I was joking, that's up for you guys to decide. So obviously we'll go back to last Thursday. Up at Church Bank, Llandovery against Ebbw Vale in the SRC Cup final. And for 50 minutes, it was great. Absolutely brilliant. Heavy contest, forwards against forwards. Didn't see much of the backs until after that point. But it was a proper tussle of fair play. So if we exclude the last half hour when things kind of went wrong for Ebbw Vale, how did you enjoy that first 50, being there as well?
Do you know what? I think the one good thing about this was it was a lot of positivity around it at the start. I think at the ground there wasn't a lot of negativity around the Thursday kickoff or the cup final being devalued. There was none of that. There was a really good sort of vibe, supporters were in good voice, really good atmosphere as well. It's one of those rare games where every minute adds some good either banter coming from the supporters and chants and songs being sung from right before kickoff. So I think it was a good occasion. Shame it couldn't have been in a slightly better position, Saturday afternoon or something like that, because I even said to Llandovery after the game on social media, what a game this could have been crowd-wise and atmosphere-wise if it had been played on a nice sunny afternoon, because the weather up there was good as well. But yeah, I think it was two strong teams on paper. Llandovery had sort of probably at their strongest now, and I think Ebbw Vale had a few key players, I guess, back just in time. Strong headwinds. I know Joe Franchi alluded to it in his interview at full time with S4C, saying it was probably a 10-12 point win, and it really did feel like it. It really came on strong. Llandovery had it with them. 6 points at half time when Ebbw Vale had lost Dom Franchi, leaving them with just one fit centre at the club. It's not a bad result at all. You think, all right, they'll have the win the second half. Second half, probably during the half-time break, the wind just completely died. Literally completely died. I know Lee Rees has alluded to it too. And Lee was happy with how it had gone for them, taking that advantage. Knew that they'd have to play, against a strong Ebbw Vale Maul. and sort of how the kicking and the territorial game would factor in. And they didn't have to deal with any of it in the end because, like I said, the wind's completely turned on its head, disappeared. Like you said, they held strong. Like, yes, there was an early-ish score for Llandovery, but you still felt the game was not out of reach until John Evans steps out the line 2 minutes after coming on, 4 months being out, and does his Achilles heel. And it's for those who aren't aware, he'd literally just been subbed on. Ebbw had to play the last 32 minutes, I think it was, or maybe 28 minutes, without a scrum half, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And you could see the difference it made. The rucks were for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It was like a battlefield. No one really. It was like shouting to try and get people in there. Obviously, as you can expect, no one really tried to dictate the play. It took a couple of minutes just to work out who was going to be coming on and the break in play. Obviously, whilst John got sort of carried off, you could see all the sort of the screws turning at what was going to happen. But Llandovery just did what they do best. Even in our first half, they were all over Ebbw at the ruck, and I feel the referee probably didn't allow a jackal for both sides. The same as I felt he let the maul get disrupted slightly too long. And that was quite summed up with the Ebbw yellow card, actually. He warned the player 3 times before that. You give the yellow card, and it's you want to see that sort of the maul's getting a bit of head of steam. You want to see a bit of a fair contest. So there was a couple of areas I felt that the referee didn't let the cup final be as good as it could have been. But yeah, I think once Llandovery smelled blood, that was it. They attacked the 12-13 channel and said Cam Davis, a great young centre, but Ian Evans isn't a centre. And they haven't worked together in midfield either. And you could see the experience in that back line. Lee Rees dictated the game yet again. We've said his name for me at the moment. He's player of the season yet again. And yeah, it's surprising. Unfortunately, the scoreline probably doesn't reflect the game. As you said, 55 minutes of this game was a reasonably close contest. Something to play for, and it literally run away. Which is disappointing for Ebbw. Obviously, they felt they would have been in a good spot. I guess the hardest part now for them is turning it round, a bit of fixture congestion, going again. But you just get that feeling at Llandovery at home, just a little bit of a different prospect that got away from them.
Yeah. It can't be, misunderstood how important, John Evans going off was. Like, Dom Franchi going off early in the first half. Yeah, it hurt, but you had players who can sort of move in and around. But when you do lose a specialist in a specialized position, like you can lose, a 12 that's an out-and-out 12 and have, a 15 or 13 pop in, and it's not so bad. But, losing a 9 and not having anyone with any sort of experience there to take over, it hurts. And I think it was the Llandovery second try was on the 53rd minute, and it just derailed further and further after that. One thing that was quite interesting, it was the maul battle that you've just said. Both teams got a maul try. Obviously, Ebbw only maul trying a 39-7 loss, and just in case we haven't already mentioned the scoreline. You had to send in a few backs in there. And even then, it was sort of a kind of a peel off the side. But it was the same when Llandovery scored from their maul. It was the backs coming in and giving that extra shunt. So, those forwards, they worked really hard in the week coming up, is knowing that the maul was going to be a weapon against them. And they had to defend it hard. So, kudos to both sets of players on there. When it did open up after that 50-whatever minute, it was when John Evans went off and they got that, that second try. We saw some beautiful attacking rugby, fair play. Someone I want to pick out is Cian Abraham. He's under contract with the Scarlets in the senior academy. And going into this season, I was thinking, he's probably not in a position where, he'll get another contract after this one. But he's been back in like 4, 5 games, and he's been absolutely outstanding. And to take a try the way he did in a final, I know you can say the pressure was a bit off, but I think it was 25-27, 7 at times. So there was obviously still time for Ebervale to come back, so it wasn't dead in the dust mill. But to take that ball out wide, run down the line, chip and chase over, and collect your own ball for the goal, it's brilliant. It's what dreams are made of. If this was literally 22, 23 years ago, just before regionalization, this try would be remembered for decades upon decades, and everyone who saw it was dead in the dirt. That's the sort of standard we're talking about here, which I absolutely loved. One thing I did mention last week is Ebervale still got a bit of a mental block, in terms of the final getting over the line. I'm not sure if that was there at all. Maybe there could have been a bit more fight after John Evans went off, but a lot of things could have happened after John Evans went off. So it's really difficult to put your finger just on that. But, Jason Strangey probably will go down as one of the only people to have played and coached Ebervale to a cup final loss, which is not a nice one for him to take, but he'll have to stay in the record books regardless. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the table finishes up, because we very much could get a reverse in either the semis or possibly even the final. So that's a big takeaway from this, and I think it'll be a massively different type of game if it was played at Eugene Cross. So, do you want to say anything else on this cup final, or shall we move on?
Cup final? What cup final?
Exactly. Okay, there was a game in the SRC League. Pontypool at home to Carmarthen Quins. And 42-17 win for Pontypool. Only 18-17 up at halftime, which means Carmarthen Quins got nailed in the second half. Now, looking at the highlights, you'd see Quins tries through the forward, thinking, yeah, their forwards are working hard. And then you look at Pontypool's tries, and, majority of them are through the forward. So, they're good at attack, but they're not so good in defense. So there's work-ons there. Again, I'm stuck at a point where I don't know where to go with Quins. I don't know what the missing link is. How are Pontypool feeling after this one?
Yeah, probably quite good. It's one of those ones, it sort of wasn't a lot of talk around this one. There's a lot of talk about the Pontypool Newport fixture coming up, and quite rightly, a lot of talk was about the cup final for last week. But all Pontypool can do at the moment is chase Newport down for that fourth spot. So obviously, the big clash is coming up, but 6 points is what you need at half time. When 1 point in it, you're sort of thinking, this is tasty. That's the sort of game that Carmarthen. They did it to Ebervale to an extent in the cup game at Eugene Cross. It was a very sort of niggly, close game, forwards getting sort of the better in sort of attack. But then I think Pontypool have done this quite a few times this season, where they've built that bit of a platform and just found that bit of cutting edge. They've got a much better backline than people give them credit for, and I think that's just gives them that next gear that they can put themselves through, that a lot of sides at sort of the mid to bottom of the table can't. Even if your tries are coming through the forwards, just having that speed of attack, that line speeds, the shift of a blitz defence, depending on whether you've got ball or sort of you're defending, just adds a different dimension. And I think you go into these sort of games, you want to try and get into Quins. As we've said, Quins are struggling. They lack the depth. They lack experience, unfortunately, at the moment. They're probably in a second year of a massive transition, especially up front, because they had a very experienced pack. We go back 3 years ago, and probably 6 of that pack were at 30 or over. Now, it's the other way around. They're 25 and under. And you take into consideration the experience of forwards that Pontypool have got, like Scott Matthews, Mike Herberts, Morgan Allen this season. They're 100 years of bloody age between them, you know what I mean? Comfortably. So it's one of those sort of ones where you look to that sort of leadership up front, and that's sort of the difference. Pontypool knew how to sort of grind their way, not that they had to grind out the result, but grind their way to the point where they can let loose. And they did. For them, it's a very big win. 6 points out of 6 is yet another basically big green tick. They're doing all they can. And yeah, I think for them it gives them a bit of a confidence run heading to a crucial fixture now this coming week. But also I think for Quins it's probably a very interesting point in terms of what it's telling us. Not many of the bottom four or bottom five, depending on how you want to look at it, are being slaughtered. Quins are at that sort of stage at the moment where you're thinking they could take some hammerings from everybody they're playing. And unfortunately, when the bottom four go into the prelims, it certainly wouldn't surprise me if they lost to any one of those other three sides that are in there, because at the moment they're in that rut, and I just don't see them getting into the quarterfinal stage unless they pick up a big win in the prelims.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on now, and I'm just looking at the fixtures for the rest of the, RGC at home this coming weekend. You've got to travel to Ebu, Bridgend, Upper Carmarthen Park, and Newport. So there's a couple home games in there. Well, more than a couple, I should say. Or is it a couple? I don't even know what I'm saying
I
anymore.
think it's a couple of years
Three
out.
by the looks of it.
Three.
But yeah, it is really hard to see where any sort of win comes from, and they're languishing in ninth at the minute. Yes, there's a bit of a gap between them and Swansea of 11 points. So I don't think Swansea can recover that at this point. But regardless, they're looking at playing an away fixture in the prelims, and
Yeah.
yeah,
That's the thing. We said about Pontypool look really good at home. Are not similar in that extent, but Quins are completely the way of when they go on the road, they really struggle. They really do. You look at the 6 pointers that Quins have had against them on the road, and unfortunately, they're in that position down the bottom. You're not expecting lots of away wins when you're down that sort of half of the table. You've got to be competitive. You've got to be picking up 4 tries in high scoring games. You've got to be sticking around 7 points. I think if it wasn't for Quinn's first month leading into the international break back in the autumn, Quinn's are in Swansea's position.
yeah,
That 11 point difference is they had a really good run. Lewis Morgan was top try scorer for that first couple of months. He got injured, spent a long time out, and obviously it's not that it's a one man team or anything like that. But that bit of momentum, with the autumn international stopped, you lose your probably your best player, your most informed player, and you could just see that bit of confidence disappear. And unfortunately, that's what they need at the moment. Is a bit like Swansea. They just need that bit of a grind out win to get them going again. But where does it come from is probably another question.
yeah. Like I've mentioned repeatedly, they lost Tom Phillips literally first game after the autumn as well. Their captain, so that doesn't help. They haven't seen as much of Charlie Titcombe as they would have probably hoped, considering how well he's played last season and in his couple cameos this season.
I think that's just
It's,
it. They've lost a lot of the support. Like you said, Titcombe from the Scarlets, Badham to injury. He's dropped out. Carwin to a Pilotu again, dropped out when he moved away from the Scarlets. So a lot of you pick the 5 players we've just mentioned, and you're thinking, shit, they've really lost a lot of either experience or professional quality. No, 5 players is a third of that team. If those 5 players are available, they all start.
yeah,
Unfortunately, Quins haven't got the depth to cover those. I mean, we mentioned Aled Thomas coming in at the start of the season, but he's played more of a cameo, I guess is the best way to say it. He hasn't been there to play 10 week in, week out, and he hasn't led that team. He feels like a bit of a transition 10 because he's been more with his local club as well. This isn't like a permanent signing that's playing 25 games this season. So yeah, I think Quins are in a bit of a struggle spot. I think they need a few key players back or for next season that bit of a changeover.
yeah. Like when I spoke with Steph Thomas at the start of the season, Quinn's DOR, he spoke about how Ellis Price was going to be the attend for this season when he's fit and ready. But, we know he's a 12. He's got the size, he's got the physique. Once he's probably got his man's strength and his bulk on, he's going to be very similar physique-esque to someone like Eddie James. So I think that was one of the reasons why they brought Alid in just before Ellis was fully match fit. Give him that bit of tutelage as well, but it just hasn't seemed to have worked as well. And then the last few games, obviously during the cup and the game with Swansea in between, they had Ellis Payne another Scarlets Academy boy who was fullback. He's been playing fullback for Newcastle Emlyn this season, and he's just gone straight into 10. So it's very much 10 is a problem position, and a few key forwards. Now, as a solution, and I don't know if this was something that Scarlets would look at, you've got a few boys in Llandovery who, they play well in a dominant pack. You've got people like Harry Thomas, Josh Morse, even Gabe Hawley this season. Now, maybe an idea, maybe chuck them with Quins. It'd be probably good for their development as well.
Yeah.
Just in a backwards going pack to see if they can change things.
It's not a bad solution, because you look at allocations this year, and I'm sure I've got my figures spot on when I say Llandovery have had 15 players allocated across this season.
If you include the under-18s players they've had, I
Yeah.
think they've had 16 turn out for them.
So, I mean, you remove a couple of those that maybe you wouldn't put in a losing side, a struggling side, But you think, yes, you're gonna have your regulars, and some of the boys at your Jack Davis are not overly regular for Llandovery, I guess. But there's enough round there that you can split that apart and sort of divvy it up. You got to play savvy. Llandovery have probably got one of the strongest squads outside of the academy allocations. Quins have probably got, I would say, the weakest on paper. It is the weakest squad, in my mind. Therefore, I'm not saying Quins have had a poor allocation. They've actually had a sizable allocation compared to some clubs. 4 or 5 in their match day squads, the last sort of couple of fixtures. But can we be a bit smarter around, the SRC is supposed to be player development, players like Gabe Hawley. Yeah, he's young, so he doesn't have the experience that they need, but he adds that sort of position that they have been sort of struggling with this season. That sort of big prop that just, he's going to carry, he's going to solidify the set piece. And I just think if the Scarlets can just be a little bit savvier with their allocation of clubs, I mean, they haven't got a ridiculous amount of clubs to spread them across. So you're going to have some nice riches. Llandovery are not going to be left under strength. You wouldn't want to weaken one side significantly, but I don't think you weaken Llandovery realistically at all by making Quinn stronger.
I mean, we will talk in more detail about the allocations, probably once we're getting into sort of semi-final, final week, probably look and see if we can get some info on who's going to be involved next season. But, those 16 players that did turn out for Llandovery, I'll going to go out on a limb because I did look at it, but I've completely forgotten. Vast majority of them didn't make it to 4 games, and there's quite a lot of them on 1. So it's a funny way of doing things. Players only having 1 or 2 games, and even then spread out. So there's balance to be had, and there's more things that can be done. But I'm just gonna leave that where it is for now, and we'll come back to that probably in about a month or so time. So, this is roughly the halfway point, if we can call it halfway. We're done with the reviews. So, like, share, subscribe, recommend a friend, anything. Give us a bit of engagement. Rob will talk to your ear off if you just drop him a comment on any socials. Bit of a media whore, if I'm totally honest with you. But yeah, let's keep it going. So,
half-time sparkling, water, not wine.
Ooh. So, shall we start with a Thursday night game, or should we finish with a Thursday night game? I'm giving you the floor.
Do you know what? We've got a bit of team news. Let's leave it till last and we can delve in properly. Let's hit the Saturday games. We've got a full fixture list this week for what seems like the first time in ages, I'll be honest.
It really is the first time in a long while. So let's go back to try and find out when it was. And it was the 4th of January. Jesus.
Christ.
Only once this year we've had a full round of fixtures. There might have been 5 played on a week with, a rearranged game, but not a planned.
Actually, we are right. There was a week in January, I'm about looking at the 26th, where Bridgend and Newport were the 2 bye teams, and they played in round 1 of the Cup. So that, again, that's January.
Yeah, it's still stupidly long when we're talking end of March, last Saturday in March. So season needs fiction. Season structure needs fixing. Again, not for tonight. It'll take way too much time. So, first game I've got up is Aberafan at home to Cardiff. Now, I'm going to put on my John hat, and, Aberafan are going to walk this, boys.
Hey.
We got a strong pack. All those Cardiff boys they've got really, really good backs. But I think I'll pack into it. So, but God's honest truth, I wouldn't be surprised to see Aberafan do it. Cardiff. I don't know how the result against Llandovery is going to affect them. Going up there, are they going to be walking around thinking, "Yeah, we're top, we can do it," and do you get kind of hit back down to earth next time you walk out in a proper competitive match, because the cup was done for them at that point. And Aberafan are a solid side. We've seen them pull off a good few results. They keep things competitive even when they don't pull off the result. So yeah, this is probably one of the more even games of this round. So take it away.
Yeah, do you know what? If both sides were fully fit, I probably would be really considering an Aberafan win. And I think there's probably one factor here that removes it for me, and that's Aberafan did their little injury update at the start of the week. And the usual front row of Rowan Jenkins, Luke Davis, Geraint James won't be in this game. So that's a really big factor, unfortunately, for them. I mean, Luke's been playing outstanding for them this season. The two Luke Davises are probably battling it out for player of the season. It's sort of been that sort of time. I mean, Rowan Jenkins is over 300 games, so the club has stepped up to Cardiff Rugby when they had to play their sort of Toulouse game. That's the level he's at. Geraint James, very sort of similar. It's a massive blow. And no disrespect to any of the boys coming in. I mean, Sal Hurley will be back off under 20s duty now, and I mean Jordan Walters has been stepping in reasonably well in sort of his position. But you just lose that sort of intimidation factor, and you also lose your depth. You lose one front row. You basically have to bring on your bench front row, and then you got to find a front three from somewhere else. I think Cardiff are just finding that mojo again. They've probably got all of their players back that they need. Josh Thomas is going to be the crucial one. Obviously, they fly off against Llandovery. He's now with the Dragons until at least the end of the season. How much of a factor that's going to be for them could be crucial. I go back to right at the start of the season where I think it took them 5 rounds before anybody started consecutive games or played 2 games at fly half. Do we look at the players like Harry Wild or somebody like that coming in? It'd be interesting to see. But I just feel at the moment, players like Derby Cross are back and scoring. Jason Harries is, the strength. Ocean Darwin Lewis had one of his best games I've ever seen him have against Llandovery. And I think Cardiff are sort of the side that I don't think they're going to be too hyped up after the Llandovery results. They know they still got to play Llandovery at the Arms Park in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, I think for me, this is probably a step too far, especially with Aberafan now. They've got a very busy schedule coming up. I mean,
Yeah, they do
right
have
in
a busy
April.
schedule. So their run-in is, Cardiff, Llandovery, Pontypool, Ebbw Vale, RGC. And, that Ebbw Vale game is on a Wednesday. So they go Thursday, Wednesday, Saturday, which is ridiculous for anything below professional level. I'd say that's borderline ridiculous for, professionals to have 3 games in the space of 9 days. So I'm just looking at what they've put out in their front row, and, Rowan Jenkins hasn't played since that round in the 4th of January.
Done for the season. He'll be
Yeah,
back next year.
he's gone. So the last 2 games, they finished within a score of Llandovery at home and Pontypool away. They didn't have any of those front row starting. So I know that I still need to catch up with you on the prediction league, and I need to throw in a few opposite choices. So I think this is going to be one. I think I'm gonna go with John, our mystery bookie who's not here, and I'm gonna say Aberafan are going to do it this one. Especially with it being a tag. I'm hoping for the sake of this predictions league, because I can see myself slipping a fair bit down now. I probably go behind John if I keep doing this too much. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Aberafan. So next up, I've got Carmarthen Quins against RGC. We've spoken a little bit about length, about the Quins. So what are RGC doing when they come to Carmarthen Park?
It's probably the least favourable ground when you look at their game plan. It's an uneven pitch. It's not the greatest of surfaces. It's open. It's windy. It's not their sort of yard. But I think at the moment they've picked up a bit of confidence from their cup. Obviously, second in that pool, when you would have thought Llandovery, Cardiff, Aberafan, and probably even Bridgend were all sort of probably back to finish above them. It is some really good work from Josh Leach and the team. They're playing some really nice rugby. They travel into a side whose confidence is absolutely dirt bottom. And this is why I'm going for an RGC win. I think they've just got that little bit of an attacking edge at the moment. They seem to have a pretty fit side. Everyone that they need is fit and fighting ready. Obviously, Billy McBride is still going to be going for his the golden boot, the top point scorer. He's still up there as one of the only men to go past the 100-point mark in the league this season. So, yeah, unfortunately, I think this is still part of a spiral for Quins, and that's why RGC for me.
Yeah, I can't see any different. I wish I could. If I could have picked any game to go against you, because I knew you'd end up going RGC in this one, it would be here. But I have to agree with you. I'm trying to find a positive. I'm going back to last season. RGC done the double over them last season as well. So it's not as though they haven't come to Carmarthen Park and won recently. Yes. There'll be good times on the horizon, but the horizon is at least September for Quins at the minute. So that was a nice quick one. I didn't expect that one to go through so fast. So I'll skip the little derby and go straight to Swansea Llandovery. Fresh off the cup win. They know they've still got business to do in the league. I mean, they're currently third, if I'm not mistaken. And there's 7 points between them and first and Cardiff, but only 2 points between them and Ebbw Vale, but Ebbw have still got that game in hand. So if they want to get at least a home semi-final, they've got to be getting 6-pointers, and they know they've got to do a job over Cardiff along the way. So I don't see anything outside of a Llandovery win for this one. Swansea have been improving massively, and it's been great to see them being so competitive. And not just competitive for 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes. They're going well into the 60th and beyond now, which is brilliant. But I'm thinking with the extra, couple of days, having that cup final on Thursday night probably does help Llandovery more than it helps Ebbw Vale. They give those boys enough time to sort of bring themselves down emotionally more than anything. You see when boys have massive wins one week, they're completely depleted the next. Those extra couple of days could be crucial in this.
Do you know what I think that helps Llandovery here is you come out of a battled, bruising, a big cup final. You've got the likes of Cardiff coming up, Aberafan coming up. This is such a nice fixture. Don't get me wrong, you can't count off St Helens. You can't count off Swansea at home. All of those sort of factors. But it's sort of the fixture where you go, let's rest a few of the boys, stick a few of the starters on the bench, bring the bench in for their starters, switch around a couple of the boys who didn't make the sort of the cup final, and sort of say, let's get into them. Now, Swansea did the week before the final give a great 40 minutes and led at half time against Ebbw Vale. Again, a couple of injuries in that first 40 minutes to Ebbw Vale probably factored in that scoreline, but once the forwards got into Swansea, that was it. Yeah. So I just don't see, I can't see anything other than a Llandovery win. And to be honest, I think the fixtures out of the top three fall best for Llandovery. Yes, they've got a couple of tough fixtures left to go, especially going to the Arms Park. But in reality, the layout of those fixtures is what makes them much more favourable. Aberafan obviously ahead, but have got a massive schedule to undertake there, so they're going to be fatigued. And like I said, you can rotate slightly here, with no disrespect to Swansea. If I'm Hugh Gustafsson, looking at from the all white sort of side of things, I want to be in it again at 40 minutes, like they did against Ebbw Vale. And then you're sort of saying, right, boys, what did we do against Ebbw Vale that didn't work? What can we improve? Can they stop them all? Because there was 4 more tries in that Ebbw Vale game. Can they stop the Llandovery Maul? You've already mentioned that as being a well defended and well used attacking weapon in the cup final gone the past week. So it's about those little battles. I think for Swansea, how do they control this game in that second half? They got to get to half time, don't get me wrong, in the first place, which wouldn't surprise me if they were in or leading the game at that point. But how do you use the influence of the bench? How do you control the game and manage it out from 40 to 60 and then 60 to 80?
Yeah. And if I bounce back to Llandovery, you just spoke about probably rotating the squad a little bit. I know they're young boys, but Josh Morse and Will Evans, they both due back any minute. Like Will Evans, was primed to play for the under-20s. He's obviously taken a bit of a knockback in his recovery along there. Josh Morse, again, he was due somewhere around this time. So they could ease them back into it. Harry Thomas obviously coming back. There's a lot of boys, and it seems a lot of forwards that, we could see a bit of rotation there for Llandovery. But yeah, I don't think there's anyone that's gonna not even the more faithful Swansea White is probably gonna be thinking,
No.
yes, we're more than 60% are thinking yes, we can win this one. But that is what it is. So on to the final Saturday game. We have let me get this right, because I don't want to mix up what we're round to play, and that would just be absolutely terrible for somebody. Newport at home to Pontypool. Another derby in the Dragons region. Why are there so many derbies in that region? I just can't figure it out.
Do you know this is one of those? It feels like a big game. Feel to this. Obviously, we had the reverse, well, not the reverse fixture, but the cup fixture at Spitty Stadium. I think this is at Rodney Parade.
Yeah.
So obviously, it adds that sort of big game feel. The cup didn't quite have that atmosphere. It felt very subdued at the ground.
Petered out.
Speaking of few people that went down, everyone sort of had acclimatized to that was basically not a warm up game or a run through game, but the result were done elsewhere. This has real serious implications because I feel if Newport win this, that's the top 4 done and sealed. You can decide the order, but the top 4 are done. If Pontypool win this game, I think I think Pontypool could very well take that 4th spot. Because of the running of the two sides. I mean, there's still a Newport Ebbw Vale derby to come, because I know you like your Gwent derbies. Again, that's at Rodney Parade as well. If you're at the Newport Marathon on the Sunday, it's the same day. So yeah, I still feel at the moment, even though Pontypool have got a bit of momentum coming out of the Quins game and sort of running up a 6-pointer, this is probably the most difficult of the fixtures to call this week. Now, do I go with a side that's on paper are good, maybe a bit weaker away from home, but have got the better form? Or do I go for a side that can call on some serious strength from the Dragons? They're at home. They do have good pedigree in sort of these derby games, as they showed, with a comfortable win in that Cup Round 5 game. And that's why I'm probably leaning Newport. So that's what I've gone for this one. It's probably splits opinion in this game based on where your allegiance is or how you sort of see it. But I feel this could be a real humdinger. And for me, it is a shame that this isn't actually the Thursday night cup game, because this has all the makings of a serious game. Something with this game, a home quarter final. Now, forget the implications of just what that means on the pitch. Both sides are backing themselves to win at home. It's a massive advantage to be playing in your sort of familiarity. You don't have to travel, boys, and the supporters are all there. You've got your financial aspect. Yes, you don't get paid for any TV games. If you get selected to go on TV, it's all part of the increased core grant for this season. But for a side like Pontypool and Newport, I'd be expecting a quarter-final game in nice weather on a Saturday afternoon to be into four-figure crowds. Now that's a bit of extra money into the club. You know, neither side have a fixed clubhouse on site, should we say? Obviously, both utilise other counterparts within the locality of the ground. But it's all that, the gate money, the programs, everything else that comes with it, and just giving that bit of a boost before the semi-final round. So Newport it is for me, but I got to be honest, this one it genuinely wouldn't surprise me if it was Pontypool. It really wouldn't.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to have to start edging towards the away side. I do agree with you in the fact this could be, winner takes fourth. Because, I'm looking at, the fixtures coming up, Ebbw Vale still to go to Newport that you alluded to. But Pontypool, they're only really, I know there's only, 4 games left, 5 for a couple of teams. Their biggest game is Cardiff on the final weekend. And by that point, I would imagine that Cardiff have probably got top 4 wrapped up. They'll know whether or not top 2 is even a possibility. So I do think it's winner takes fourth. Yeah. And it's not dry cut and done as there's 5 points between them at the minute. If it's just a 4-point win, that still leaves Pontypool a point behind. Bonus points could be enough just to see Newport through. And I just want Ebbw to finish 5th. I don't know why. I don't know why that's in my mind right now. But yeah, we've all wondered about Pontypool. Like, we praised them in that very first game of the season. They've been very up and down, in and around. Obviously, we heard from Tom Hancock a little bit during that cup final. But yeah, I'll back Pontypool. Why not? Because even though they did give that cup win Newport in this exact same fixture, it didn't seem like there was anything really right. Even though there was something riding on it, it didn't feel like there was anything riding on it. And
I think you've nailed it with the way that the table works as well, and how it's the mental thing. Like I said, 5 points between the two sides. Obviously, Pontypool were 11 points behind before last week. They took that 6 points. All of a sudden, this game is like another game in hand. When you play someone that you can overtake, I mean, let's assume that there's only a 4-point margin and Newport's get a point. All of a sudden, that 5-point gap goes down to a 2-point gap. Basically, then it's you don't even have to worry about overtaking them with a win or anything like that. It's battle of bonus points. So if they do drop a result somewhere, that's massive implications, because you could well throw your entire season.
Yeah, and we know teams have capitulated in worse ways than just dropping from 4th to 5th.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a nice one to go through. So that brings us to our final game, which is the earliest game, the first game we're going to see, and we get to see it live on Teledu. It is Ebbw Vale at home against Bridgend. Now, got a bit of team news to share. So, like you stated, Ebbw are down to 1 fit centre. Or are they? It seems that Harry Wilson of the Dragons has decided, you know what, I fancy a game at Eugene Cross, sunny Australian weather, playing games all day. Just, it doesn't work for me. I want to come on a very brisk spring evening. And Ethan Phillips is also back as well, isn't he?
He is. It was interesting speaking to him quite a few weeks back, and he was hoping to be around for this fixture. Whether it's been accelerated with the loss of Dom now for this week as well, that doesn't look like it's going to be a long-term injury, obviously with all the concussion protocols and stuff like that the clubs are going to follow through. It's very interesting to see Harry Wilson in there. I think it's September he last played. He's been a very long time without some game time. And it's always interesting to see these, I call them a major name. Obviously, players like Kobe Reese, Morgan Williams, Owen Conker last season have typically been around the Ebbw Vale camp from the Dragons, but it's very, very rare that we see let's call them a parachute player. The more senior, you're sort of basically they're the starting 15 or match day 23 player. It's very rare to see a Dragons 23 player in the Ebbw Vale sort of lineup, and that probably says one, this is what it's all about. Let's forget all the bollocks and the sort of the misdemeanors around 2003 and the crap that comes with it since. That the club and the region are, at least in some sense, speaking and working around player development and filling gaps, which is what it's all about. Ebbw Vale have a requirement to fill up some midfield space here, and obviously Harry Wilson has a requirement to get some game time under his belt. There's obviously Dan Buffrey's had to come in at scrum half replacement with Griff Tuffy when underneath an operation a week last Monday, straight after the Swansea game. Whether he's back before the end of the season, fingers crossed, I think is the sort of hope there. Obviously, John Evans done his Achilles, looks to be probably done now for the season. But quite a few changes as we sort of expect. I think Ebbw Vale put a lot into that last half an hour. Not that they didn't put a lot into the entire game, but once you lose your scrum half, you could see the monster defensive shift just to try and keep Llandovery at bay effectively at that point was what it was changing things round up front. Obviously, Yaya Morris is coming in for Joe Franchi. Obviously, means Cam Regan takes the captaincy. All these different sort of battles. Matty Jones is back fit now as well. Obviously, after a couple of appearances off the bench, which is really, really good news. So you can see this is an Ebbw Vale side that are struggling with a few injuries at the moment. We've mentioned about the requirement of the bonus points. Obviously, a win puts them back top of the table. But you do have to look down the line and say, well, are you going to be getting 6-pointers against Newport and Aberavon both away? Seems unlikely, but what can you chalk up this week to really help yourself further down the line? And so that's going to be the crucial one, I think, for Ebbw Vale, is how they manage their game time now. Especially they got 3 games. We think Aberavon's bad with 3 games in 9 days. Because of the way the fixtures fall, Ebbw Vale play on the Sunday. It actually works out, I think it's like 3 and 7 days. They play on the Sunday away to Newport, the Wednesday away to Aberavon, and then Saturday they're home to Swansea. So you can see really how nasty these fixtures start becoming right before the fixtures for the playoffs, and pretty much other than the prelim round, there's no break. Yeah, it's not like you get an extended layoff or there's a couple of weeks of catch-ups for other clubs. You're done there, prelims, quarterfinals, so you're not going to get much done. But I think Jason will get him in the right mindset. One training session before turning it round. That probably helps in some ways. You clear their heads. You can see the disappointed faces on Thursday night. It's at least you have that bit of a weekend to try and cleanse your mind. Yes, it's not a short turnaround or a long turnaround because it's the Thursday to Thursday. But looking at the squad, I don't think they'd be too displeased. I think it's managing Bridgend more than anything, because Bridgend have been a bit of a bogey side for Ebbw Vale the last couple of seasons, especially at home. It's that really dogged team that brings it into a bit of a scrappy games, or ones that nearly get away or do get away.
Yeah, I'm sort of looking at Bridgend's, past few fixtures. They've won 4, they've lost 7. In those games they lost, it was 3 points at home against Newport. 36-25 away to Aberavon, 50-35 away to Llandovery. So scoring away from home certainly isn't an issue for them. In their last 3 away games, they've scored 98 points. So, that's going to be a positive for them going in. But this is something we have seen from Bridgend all season. They can attack. They do like to play. They're trying to develop, an all-round game, which is, something I believe Scott Baldwin has spoken about on numerous occasions. And he also has spoken about creating not a semi-pro club, about creating a professional club for semi-time, which, you know, is an interesting approach when you only got boys for, you know, X amount of hours. So if kind of had a little tinker at what we expect the squad to be, you know, Tobias, you know, jumping back off the bench, you know, he has been a mainstay, you know, in that 3 shirt, which is, you know, massive. Travis Huntley, you know, playing in the lock again. I like the look of, you know, the Bridgend pack. It is, you know, something we don't always see work. We don't always see mobile athletic packs work well, but they are one that does. The interesting one is a 10. So rumors have it Paul Short is going to be starting at 10. So
Yeah, the interesting thing here is obviously they've had Luke Price at the start of the season. They had Ben Burnell come in. Paul Short obviously been around in this time, but recently Harvey Nash has been playing at 10 for the last few games. Now Harvey's on the bench at 21, which tells me he's probably in at 9 because there's no other 9 cover there. You know, they've obviously lost Ryan Wilkins. He's gone down under, so you know, a bit of a midfield sort of potent threat at the start of the season, along with Rowley. He was scoring really well at the start of the season. Sort of lost their way a bit there. Obviously, no Ben Burnell in the squad at all. It's probably one of these weird fixtures where they're going to go out to try and match Ebervale. The back row is definitely an edgy one. They like living on the edge. They like bordering that game management, making it difficult. If it goes well, it goes well, and you can really get something out of the game, as they proved by beating Cardiff for the first time in a decade at home in the cup. So it's not a bad side this at all, and it'd be interesting to see how they do go. Obviously, Eugene Cross has been really good for Ebervale this season in terms of the set piece. They've had to make a few changes there, and are only playing with two locks. They usually play with 3 in their starting lineup, playing Jack Pope but blindside. So it's interesting to see how Bridgend counter that. And as you say, with a bit more of a mobile pack, they're not a scrum, tackle, line out, burger, scrum, line out, tackle, chips sort of pack. They're very much let's pick the ball up, and they're not just a first or second phase option. They're 4, 5, 6. That they really do recycle not just the ball but the players really well in an attacking scenario. Whether that's something that they're going to try and do is trying to sort of play Ebervale in a bit of a fast, open-paced game. You know, try and get into the lungs a bit. Obviously, you know, they've had a bit of a rest and sort of work on a lot of stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see a few different line-out combinations or some out-of-the-ordinary attacking options from Bridgend. They've had a few weeks to work on those on the training park, but I'm interested to see how this one goes. Like I said, it's on S4C. It's on the cameras. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game.
yeah, I'm looking back at the 10 situation by year, and you know, we haven't seen either Luke Price or Ben Burnell since January. You know, Ben's last appearance. Actually, no, Ben was in the back end of December. Christ, it's been a long time. We've had Ed Howley play at 10, which I'm assuming didn't go to plan because it was the one game at 10, then straight back into 15 for the rest. But yeah, it is very, very intriguing to see where this one goes. I don't see anything other than Ebu Win. Trying to say Ebu Vale and Ebu Win at the same time does not go well. Yeah, I do like what I've seen from Bridgend this season, and I'm really happy to see them get a game in front of the cameras. So, does that bring us to the end of this week?
It does. It rounds us off with a home fixture prediction, which I think we'll agree on.
Yeah, we will. Okay, so that does wrap it up for this week. We will come back to you again next week, hopefully. Maybe with an extra one of us. Maybe with an extra 3. Who knows? We could just get loads of people on for the sake of it. Who am I kidding? Who wants to talk about SRC rugby on a Wednesday night? Everyone does. Okay, thank you everyone if you made it this far for listening and putting up with us. We hope you stick around for a few more weeks, at least until the end of the grand final. So thank you for joining me, Rob. Thank you everyone for listening.
My pleasure, sir. My pleasure.
We'll go again next week.
Cheers,
Bye,
Rob.
everyone.
That was the Super Rugby Cymru podcast. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us again next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
They got Willa. They got my daughter. I need to find her.
From acclaimed director Paul Thomas Anderson.
You can save that girl.
Today, experience what is being called the best movie of the year.
This is the end of the line. Not for you.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Tiana Taylor, Chase Infinity.
Let's go! Here I
One battle after another. Now playing only in theaters. Experience it in IMAX. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
You can't hide.